Hello, everybody. Welcome to Good Morning, Good Night, episode 20, the big one, or well, a big one. I'm always big fans of milestones and those kind of, 5-10s, that kind of stuff. My name is Matt Demers. I'm here with Will Cho, two esports professionals on opposite ends of the world talking about video games, life, all that other stuff. Will, before you answer, I have a question for you. Are you one of those people that has to have the volume of a TV either on the even number or on a multiple of 5?
Nope.
No? Damn.
Nope.
I'm impressed.
Not at all, actually.
That's some self-control.
They will oftentimes my volume meters will end up in very weird numbers because but that's a very also just audio thing. So that you may have chosen the wrong question because I'm very sensitive to audio and volume.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like fine tuning it to the exact volume that I want is more important than seeing the number.
I found that as I grow older, I'm very much more sensitive to audio, where like usually it's less about finding a way to turn it up and more about a way to find to turn it down and still have it be like granular enough that the control is like it's fine enough that I can actually make like really minute adjustments. But I don't know. I hear that meme a lot where people are like, yeah, it has to either be on an even number, so like 20, 22, whatever, or on a multiple of 5, so it's like 15 or 20 or something like that for a volume on the TV. I'm definitely one of those people. I don't know. I can't have volume on like a 23. It's either 24 or 22 or 25. Will, how are you doing this week? No, sorry.
Talking about numbers. Did you know that the rumor for why Walmart failed in Korea is because they kept trying to sell things in dozens and half dozens, but Korea only sells things in packs of 5?
Packs of 5?
Oh my gosh. Yep. Everything. Well, these days it's like, with all the like sales and
totally.
deals, like there's other things, but like ramen used to always be packs of 5. That's like the biggest example. Like ramen is always 5 packs.
That's okay. That's just a cultural difference. I'm like trying to wrap my head around, because like here it's like sixes and 8s and 10s maybe, I don't know, but for some reason that just comes up with for like Walmart in Canada, at least they have these like bulk packs of like chicken breasts, and it's probably the only thing that I've ever seen that's like a flat number where it's just like flat $10, and it's like normally stores and that kind of stuff will package things as like $9.99 or something else that like psychologically tricks you. But I'm one of those people that I'm just like, I actually prefer that. I enjoy not tricking me. Just tell me it's a flat number. Just tell me it's a flat $10. Well, how are you doing this week now that my inane questions have been answered?
I'm good. I'm trying to think. Nothing too crazy has happened. On a bit of a personal note, my dog went blind about a week and a half ago. So we've been doing a lot of different like tests and vet runs, and most likely taking her into surgery next week. So my days have been much more about like monitoring her and obviously administering like all the meds and things like that. So there's a bit more that I have to keep track of day to day. But other than that, it's rain season, or Korea's monsoon season, but it's like weird to say that globally, because then people are like, oh, like monsoons, and they think like Southeast Asian monsoons, which are like way worse. But within Korea, like it's like the rain season starting to hit, but it's like it's one of those things where it seems like the rain clouds haven't quite decided if they want to kick it off yet or not. And so every day the forecast is it's starting tomorrow, and then it like rains, but it like not quite that much. And so it's kind of just gloomy days, but it'll come and go. Like the southern part of Korea oftentimes suffers from a lot of flooding during those seasons, but Seoul, most parts are okay, obviously depending on neighborhood, but should be all right.
In Canada, we're currently, I don't know, we keep getting warnings for tropical storms and like tornadoes and stuff like that, and it's like, I don't know. We've had bad rain, but like tornadoes and stuff like that. I don't know. It just seems like one of those things that happens in like prairies or like, those wide open like states in the US and that kind of stuff. So I'm not too particularly worried. Just I don't like the heat very much. I'm not a summer person. I'm a winter person. I think it's vastly easier to cool or like warm up rather than it is cool off. So
100%.
yeah, you can easily put on layers. You can't, get colder in a very practical way. So I'm just kind of enjoying the air conditioning and that kind of stuff. I don't know. 2020 just seems to be like a giant write-off year where everything let's just get everything horrible out of the way. Let's just kind of have it all happen and let's just go back to some kind of normalcy. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. We wanted to we as we usually do, we hit up our Discord and chat about what we want to talk about in the week's episode. And one thing that kind of we touched on a couple last week or a couple weeks ago, where we're just like, okay, let's put the whole big like games as art discussion on, put a pin in that until Will finishes The Last of Us 2. And we're still working. As far as I know, Will, you're still working on that. So
still
how's that
working
going?
on it. It's good so far. I mean, for I guess early impressions, I am enjoying it in terms of just as a game, and I'm loving it. I've miraculously yet again avoided any spoilers, and so like I don't even know what the controversies were specifically about before the game like released when it comes to like the story and stuff. I know there was a lot, but so far what I've seen, I don't have like I'm not like, oh, that was just like bad writing or whatever, right? Like there are things that might have upset me, but yeah. So far it's been good. It's good to. I mean, it's just it is much more tense than what I remember The Last of Us 1 being, and it seems most people seem to agree with that. So I wasn't quite ready for that. If you know me, I'm not very good with like scary games, and not that this is like a horror game, but it's much more tense. Like I breathe a sigh of relief every time a peaceful cutscene happens because I'm just like super tensed up the whole time I'm playing. But yeah, it's been good so far. I'm enjoying it. I'm kind of eager to finish it. It's just taking a little longer because I haven't been able to stream as much last week because of some AC and heat problems. But should be getting through it this week. Yeah, I'm very happy about that. But should be getting through it this week, so we can touch upon it, in the coming weeks for sure. But yeah, we're chugging along.
I'm trying to find a GIF that just based on The Last of Us. There's a specific account that I think they've made a very good niche for themselves as being like a combo kind of like. It's one of those things where they're so good at like character action games and those kind of like I guess action games is the best way of putting it.
I know his name.
You know what I'm talking about, right? They do like a Devil May Cry.
I follow him. Yeah.
They do a lot of.
He's really good.
They do a lot of Devil May Cry gifs, and I'm very impressed because like I got my start in esports or like a big like boost in my initial like following and stuff by just like figuring out a way to do like proper team fight breakdown gifs in League of Legends. So every time someone finds a really creative use of gifs for the platform like of Twitter, I'm always really impressed. And this person, for people who don't know, when I was doing that kind of stuff, the GIF limit on Twitter I think was 3 megabytes. It could have been 5 at that time, I'm not sure. But for a GIF, that is not a lot of space. That is not a lot of space whatsoever. And especially with an environment that involves a lot of colors and a lot of moving, that's very difficult in order to get a decent sized GIF on Twitter. So they recently, I say recently, it's probably a couple of years ago now, they updated that to 15. So you go from 5 megabytes to 15 megabytes, and that's a lot of space comparatively. But even with that, the stuff that this guy does and the amount of color and detail and stuff that he puts into his GIFs is his name is Sunhi Legend. So it's Sunhi and then Legend. It's all one word. So I finally found it. But the reason I bring this up is I saw, normally, like I say, he does like Devil May Cry and like other, action game, Bloodborne, that kind of stuff. And I guess the idea is that the gifts that he's doing are particularly like skillful. Or at least the ones that I see retweeted the most are the ones where he's like doing like frame perfect dodges and it looks like a movie because like the way the hitboxes are operating and that kind of stuff. But the one that I saw from him was he posted in July 28th for The Last of Us Part 2. And for some reason, this is probably going to like go into our like later discussion of it, but I'm generally okay with like video game depictions of violence. But for some reason, watching this like gif of The Last of Us, of this person going through this like combat section in a very like cinematic way, just made me really friggin' uncomfortable because like the violence looks very realistic, and it's that kind of like Walking Dead violence where like I don't know, I don't know how to explain.
Did you ever play the first Last of Us?
No, I did not.
Okay, so The Last of Us 1 was also very brutal. Like,
yeah.
Like, even though it was... So, Last of Us 2 definitely features way more human-on-human combat, which I think is a big part of it. And I think that was part of some people's problem, that it was, like... It felt like you had to, like, fight humans, whereas 1 was definitely mostly against the infected.
Yeah.
But even in 1, like... So, again, I don't do well with, like, violent video games, right? I don't do well with, like, brutal stuff. And so even 1, initially I was like, oh, shoot, like maybe I made a mistake because like I went up to like I went up to melee infected and he like basically curb stomps the infected, but it's like very cinematically done. What I will give props to the game for is that it definitely is whenever you take these actions, so it's not just the brutal actions, it's like when you're like coming out of a crevice. I was actually talking about it today during some of my gameplay. The game's camera angle takes over, and they do these like cinematic turns or zoom ins that is definitely meant to incite a reaction, right? So whether it's to make you too uncomfortable or whether it's just to be like, oh, like holy crap, or like if you're going around a corner, like make you tense up. It definitely does these weird things where it doesn't get in the way of your gameplay, right? I'm not like, shoot, why is it taking over my camera again? But it's just like these very slight like zoom ins or getting closer over the shoulder, things like that. I feel like they definitely researched a lot of that to make it feel like you can't avoid it, basically, right? So you have to feel a reaction. Last of Us 2, yeah, so far. So, I mean, I've done a lot of combat so far in the game, both against infected and humans. I mean, I think, so story-wise, they're, like, I'm not sitting there being like, I don't know if this was necessary, right? Just having played 1, knowing the story so far, I think the level of violence makes sense for that world.
Yep.
It's definitely not comfortable, though. I will give you that. I think it's a question of whether... was that I guess, is that something you can applaud in the sake of like presentation?
Totally.
And that will have to wait, I guess, because I guess a big part of that would be the resolution. But we'll wait and see. So far, again, it's for me, it's not to a point where it's bothered me enough where I'm like, I don't want to play this anymore. I'm just like, oh, like I keep looking away. I'm like, oh, I can't watch this. But then but I'm like, oh, I got to find out more. I will say I've watched some of his GIFs for The Last of Us as well, that have come up on my timeline. I will say, now having played the game, I think The Last of Us actually, it does make it worse on his GIFs because they're so calculated. So it actually takes, so the brutality stays, but it actually takes away a little bit of the human element. Also, there's no sound, so that probably does it as well. I think but when I'm playing the game, it's not as like trained killer doesn't care about any blood type feeling, whereas his gifts are definitely like that.
Yeah, like I think, well, that's an important thing with the story element anyway. Is like, of course, his gifts are the easiest way to put it. Is they're meant to be cinematic and they're meant to be show expertise. Like they're meant to look like that kind of John Wick kind of, both in the cinema of the camera angles and stuff. Usually he's found a way to like strip away all the UI elements and stuff like that, so you're not seeing button prompts and whatever. The main, like, the thing for me is like I was thinking about it and I was like, what's different about being uncomfortable looking at this and then playing something like Doom Eternal or Doom 2016 or whatever, where you're, doing all the glory kills and stuff like that, or even like other, Death Stranding, or not Death Stranding, because Death Stranding's a bad example. You actually don't want to kill people in Death Stranding as much as possible. There's a story reason why you don't want to kill people as much as possible, but I was thinking about like other Assassin's Creed games or something like that. I don't know. Usually the type of violence that makes me like really uncomfortable when I'm watching movies or TV or video games or whatever is usually it involves sound, and that's what you were saying when there's no sound in these GIFs. Like I've been watching the one that I said that makes me uncomfortable and watching it on repeat as we've been talking here, just to like, kind of get over that shock value, I guess. And I think part of it is it's almost like I can kind of hear
right.
Like I can kind of hear the sound of it. And usually, like I said, I think The Walking Dead is a big one, where when they kill human characters in Walking Dead, it's very unglamorous, and it's almost like it's not very, I don't want to say it's not very heroic, because I don't want people to kind of be like, oh, like, yeah, it's very naive to think that everyone deserves a heroic death. But usually the deaths or like the violence that... Hello? I can hear you.
I've lost Matt,
okay.
But I assume he is still recording fine.
Yes, I can hear you.
If that's perfect. Me or Discord.
I can hear you fine. Hold on, I'm gonna twitch.tv will show.
It sounded like it was definitely a connection thing because he like roboted out.
Can hear you. Perfect.
But let's see if I can message him. Oh. Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. Hi.
I heard you
How's it going? I
as soon
could
as
hear
you started
you.
typing, I heard you.
Yeah, I could hear you perfect. It was very weird, and yeah, I'm still recording, so I'm just gonna get like a couple seconds of silence before I go back in. Usually, like the type of stuff that's like violence that like either scarred me as a kid, or like I've thought a lot about this in terms of or things that make me like violence that makes me really uncomfortable. Usually involves I don't want to say begging, or like it's usually like that's a weird way of putting it, but have you ever seen Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
Usually
I
the
say
type
yes
of,
just because it's
been a while.
Ago,
yeah, it's been a while for me too. But usually like the type of violence, I guess emblematic of it is usually it's a very specific, I guess, example, but like I think in the Omaha Beach at the beginning, there's the guy trying to like put his guts back in, or like people that are trying to like basically try in vain to not die. Or like there's a scene in Saving Private Ryan where like a German soldier is trying to like force a knife into one of the characters' chests, and he eventually does, but it's not just a quick stabbing. It's the person literally has his arm like grabbing the person's arm that's trying to stab him and trying to keep him from stabbing him. So it's it's about that hopelessness, and it's about that kind of like, I get what they're trying to do and trying to make you like feel sorry for NPCs and stuff like that. It's just that I am usually very very sensitive to like murder porn or misery porn, I think is the best way of putting it, where the game is trying to make you feel something and then make you feel bad for feeling something by taking the situation out of your control. Where I don't know, I think that's a common criticism that I saw from a lot of people about The Last of Us 2 in general, where it was like, okay, you're telling me that violence is bad, but you're also putting me in a situation where I can't do anything but be violent. So I don't know. Those kind of situations. I don't know. I'm stumbling over my words a lot, but I think the brutality of combat, especially when you humanize your enemies, when you give them voices, if they aren't just like grunts that are like, you don't hear them screaming for their lives kind of thing. But I think that's something, like I said, that, or like you said anyway, that they probably plan for, because, you think about Gears of War, or you think about like other, even like Star Wars games where you're shooting clone troopers or something, or like clone troopers, stormtroopers, whatever. They're not meant to, make you feel bad for killing them. And I think that's one of the reasons why Star Wars really stayed in that kind of Clone Wars era for so long, was that on one side you've got disposable clones, and on the other side you've got robots. You know, it's like it's two armies that can fight forever, that you never have to feel bad or that these grunts are dying by the thousands kind of thing. So I don't know. It's probably one of those things that I probably can't articulate well unless I've played the game, but I also know that it's one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, I am not going to enjoy that. I am probably going to be very like uncomfortable the whole time. And I guess, like I said, like we've kind of touched on, is that art isn't necessarily supposed to be comfortable all the time. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, at least.
Yeah, just so we're very clear, I am very uncomfortable playing it, but I enjoyed the game, right?
Yes,
and the
definitely.
gameplay mechanics.
Yeah.
But like for instance, like I couldn't finish Sekiro because I don't do well with knives and blood.
Yeah.
As a combination in video games. So obviously Sekiro being a Japanese
samurai
game,
yes.
with with samurai swords, it's like, okay, after a while I was like, I can't do this anymore. As cool as it is, like as much as I love the boss mechanics, I like can't keep up with it. But yeah, so again, we'll talk about it more. I have some notes I would want to say about, or I guess like a different school of thought that I agree. I've seen what you've talked about. Like you said, a lot of people seem to have that criticism of like, you keep telling me this is bad, but then I keep having to do it type of thing with The Last of Us. I'll be straight up honest. I haven't felt that yet.
Well, that's good.
But we'll see. I think I'm still pretty early on, so we'll have to wait and see if maybe the story kind of shifts from that. But again, I think we can dive into that further once I've finished the game, and that way I'll have some better perspective as well.
Oh yeah, totally. I think me just bringing it up was more about just being like, okay, like I've done a lot of thinking about why certain types of violence hit me different, and there was also this Twitter thread this week where they were like, name one thing from your childhood that like one TV episode that like scarred you for life. And I think definitely there's an episode of Reboot. Did you ever watch Reboot?
Nope.
Oh my god, Will. Anyways, Reboot is a point of cultural pride for Canada because it's a Canadian series. But I think every kid has a weird moment in their lives when they realize the good guys don't always win. And in Reboot, there's the point where they very much shifted from kids show, monster of the week kind of thing to an overarching plot line is when their main protagonist like loses, and in a very heart-rending way, like I don't want to say it's misery porn because it isn't misery porn, but it's done in a way that it hit 10-year-old me very hard, and to a point where every time I watch that show, if the certain title card for the certain episode came up, I would be like, nope, not watching this episode. So that's kind of like informed how I handle like game violence and certain things, and it's an interesting thing to think about where your personal boundaries are and how your personal boundaries are actually like formed. Mostly because like you usually can understand it over the course of your life, if that makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I've been enjoying Death Stranding a lot. I didn't think I would love it as much as I do. And it's very weird where I just have nothing but positive things to say about that game. And very much like every time I play it, I'm like, I'm satisfied. I like this game. I'm fully in. And I'm not one of those people that is like, I know we talked about auteurs and like Nomura and like other kind of, or Yoko Taros and of the world where they're like really out there and really kind of earn their creativity. And Kojima is like the big one where everyone's like, yeah, Hideo Kojima is just weird and he does whatever he wants and he likes to emulate like cinema and that kind of stuff. I'm not even like on board because I'm like, oh yeah, Kojima's so wacky, I really like this the crazy story. I'm just like, no, there's a thing in the game, and I brought this up previously, where it's called Porter Syndrome, where people needed to find usefulness in bringing packages to other places. And I think the game wants you to think about that when you're doing deliveries in the game, because there is something very satisfying about being like, there's no air travel, there's no roads. I spent half an hour trying to just get around this mountaintop. It feels very satisfying when you drop off the cargo that you were supposed to drop off. And I'm at a point in the game now where it's just almost exclusively mountains, and it's almost exclusively like snow and mountains. So the game does a really good job of starting you off on a very flat like surface, if that makes sense. Like the region you
Right.
start in is very flat. There's rocks and rivers and stuff like that, fine, and that's kind of what you have to get around. But eventually you get more inclines and more different weather and that kind of stuff. And now I'm kind of in the ending stretch where they're just like, all right, you're on a mountaintop and it's all snow all the time and there are no flat surfaces. You better have brought a lot of ladders, and you better have brought a lot of like climbing ropes and that kind of stuff. So even like a distance that would take me maybe like 5 minutes of in real life time to go straight through previously is now taking me like a half hour, 45 minutes, just because I have to find grippable surfaces and like that kind of stuff. But did you ever play World of Warcraft?
I played a little bit of Classic when it came out,
Yeah.
but not much.
Well, have you ever played MMOs? I guess is maybe the better better way of putting it. But yes,
lot.
okay,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I'm just clarifying. But like, have you ever been exploring in an MMO or like climbing like an in-game mountain in an MMO, and you're like, I kind of know what surface is walkable for my character, and what surface is gonna like slide me down the mountain or make me fall or something like that. Have you ever had those like sequence breaking moments where you're like, I think I can get up this mountain, or I think I can get up the surface. I kind of know if it's flat enough that my character can actually walk on it.
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking on, whether I've therefore challenged myself to climb it, or if I have the like knowledge to determine whether I can climb it or not.
It's mostly that the game doesn't want you to climb it in that specific way. The game wants you to go up like a specific...
I break mountains all the time.
Yeah,
I'll, like,
yeah.
hop and bunny hop over them and things like that. Yeah.
Exactly, but you're like hopping up almost like a surface that you're not really... You don't know if you're actually supposed to be going up that surface or not.
Well, it's not intended, right? You're almost
yeah.
half glitching your way through it. Yeah.
Because you know, like, I guess the thing is that you're familiar enough with the game engine that you know what is flat enough in order to stand on. So you're like... Mm-hmm. All right, I can kind of jump this. I can jump this at a weird diagonal. You know, my mount can get me enough speed in order to clear this gap. That's pretty much Death Stranding's whole game. Not necessarily because it's so unclear. It's more of, I think I can climb up that with enough speed. I think that if I jump at it with enough speed, I'll get the prompt that says climb, so that I'll like mantle myself up onto this surface. And especially when like the amount of time that you take on a delivery is factored in. And also they have part of your grading for each delivery says how long was your route and how long was it deviating from the shortest possible way of walking. So you get more points or more likes in game based on how much of a deviation you took in your route. So it's very much like... it's very much just fighting the environment, and I think that's the entire point of the game. Is you're just, like I said before, it's man versus environment, and it's very rewarding in its own way. I don't know. Usually I'm not a big AAA gaming kind of person, and for some reason this has hooked me really hard. So I'm not about to like regret that, if that makes sense.
No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, we talk usually the night before about like what we want to talk about on the podcast, and something that has kind of come up for me yesterday, especially, and then for a lot of the week, has been the network effect. So the network effect is basically a idea that you're on social media or a messaging platform. Messaging platform is a great way of looking at it. Is all your friends are already on a network or like use a service, so trying to drag them away from that service is very difficult, because you need to like sell it for each individual person. And at a certain point you just say, okay, I'm not going to get rid of my Facebook, or I'm not going to get rid of my WhatsApp, because that's where all my friends are. So there's a couple things that came up this week that made me kind of think about that a little bit, and one of them was Discord really changed its kind of partner service, where before, partners on Discord were very kind of like, what's the easiest way to put it? It feels that Discord has gotten more corporate in its kind of reach out, and its aesthetic, if that makes sense. It feels like it's dropped a lot of its gamer branding, and it's really focused on trying to become a platform for communities rather than a platform for gamers. So I've seen a lot of friends. Sure. I've seen a lot of friends who are like Discord partners, like their servers are partnered, and the rules have kind of changed in a way where, if you want to be a partner now or something, you might not be able to have like a private subscriber Discord. It has to be public, or it has to be like listed in a directory. Or I think one of the things that I saw was that it has to have like 50 chatters per month in order to maintain your partner status. It isn't just something that you like get. You have to like maintain it. So a lot of people are kind of notably and I don't want to say angry, but they're frustrated, where it's just like, hey, what the hell? It's like you used to be very like minded towards, the gaming community and stuff like that, and it feels like increasingly that you're not. And the thing is like, where else are people going to go? Like, with the thing that drove people to Discord in the first place was away from Skype, because Skype was such a bad service and such a security liability for esports and streamers and that kind of stuff, that Discord, even just having a streamer mode, like I had to send Will, like we had a voice channel drop, I had to send Will a Discord invite to change servers, and because I have OBS running, it didn't show the invite link, like the actual URL. It said, click the copy button, so you can just copy the URL to your clipboard. So having safety stuff built in to Discord was really a thing, where if you added the wrong person to your Skype, they'd see your IP and then they'd be able to DDoS you. That was like a big deal in early League of Legends esports and early like Twitch modern era, so to speak. So I think it's a weird thing where unless a better service comes along, like, it's about service, it's about convenience, it's about providing a better product. And Discord isn't, while it's making it rougher, there's no alternative. And I think it's the same thing with YouTube, where like YouTube, there's no alternative to YouTube. The alternatives to YouTube are pretty much all the platforms where people get banned from YouTube and they go to those platforms. So they don't, it's a very weird network effect where it's like, oh, if I'm just seeking to try to have a better like alternative to YouTube and not like support this giant monopoly on the video space, I'm pretty much, my coworkers or my neighbors, so to speak, are all these like terrible people who have gotten banned from YouTube, and need another place to put their videos. So it becomes very hard to just like establish that kind of alternative, especially in the video space, because the video takes up so much bandwidth, and like is such a lost leader in terms of costs anyway. Video bandwidth and that kind of stuff just takes up so much server space. So with Discord, like where I'm going with all this is that between Discord and WordPress, because I've had to like tweak my blog a lot this week, I tried to find an alternative to Discord that was self-hosted. So for Zoomers on the internet, or Zoomers listening to our podcast, before Discord and before Skype were like big things. Skype is a bit different because like esports kind of ran on Skype, but you would join things like Ventrilo or TeamSpeak or Mumble, which someone would buy server space, and then you would host that software on the server space, and everyone would be completely responsible for the moderation and membership of that server, passwords, IP addresses, whatever. But it wasn't as convenient as Discord. You'd still have to pass someone an IP address and a password and whatever, instead of just giving them an invite link. And then you wouldn't have things like, it would be on the server to set up avatars or emotes or whatever. Discord basically automated all those things, and they said, hey, the price of paying that, like of using our service, is that we collect your data, because they host all the infrastructure.
Right.
So someone doesn't have to buy a server space. and then they make all these, they have to pay their development costs and that kind of stuff. But I pretty much just wanted to see, hey, like, is it possible to, like, what goes into hosting an alternative for Discord? Because there are Discord alternatives. There's one called Element.io, which was the one that I mainly used, and they used to be called Riot.im, and I think that's funny because I was like, yeah, they definitely changed their name like last week to Element.io because Riot probably is not the best company name in order to try to compete with. But the problem is that, like, it works and it looks very similar to Discord, but it's not as normal people friendly. Like, in order for it to be self-hosted, and it's very privacy focused, where it's like, okay, you can set it so that if a user doesn't have an encrypted key, or like they aren't using two-factor authentication, or they don't have their messages encrypted or whatever, they just can't join your server. So it's much more privacy focused, and it's much more like power user focused, where you can pretty much customize a whole lot more things. But it's not Discord, and that's the coming back to around to the network effect kind of thing, is that it's not Discord. So if I just decided to take, like, I don't have a large Discord server or anything like that. I pretty much use it to automate announcements of when, like, new podcasts and streams come up and that kind of stuff. But if I just decided to close my Discord server on principle and say, I don't like Discord and how they're changing, things, I'm just going to close my Discord server and I'm going to take it over to this, I'm making a huge ask out of all my listeners or people that want to join that server, because not only do they have to sign up for another account, they have to, like, keep that open to, like, see chat messages, instead of just being like, oh, I'm part of like a dozen Discord servers. I just need one login. I just need one avatar. I just need one setup. And then I can see when new messages come in on the left pane of Discord where all my servers are located. So it's a weird centralization of the internet. It's expecting everyone to be on the same, like, communities and the same services, and there's no way to, like, break away from that without great expense and, like, difficulty. I don't know. I don't like it. It's one of those kind of, I think I've talked about on the podcast before, of I wish forums would come back. I wish, like, individual forums would come back instead of everyone just going to Reddit. Because it's the same kind of thing. Most of the users are on Reddit, most of the users are on Discord, so that's where these companies and communities are going to go. And that means that you're kind of at their whim, the company's whim of when they want to change or what tools they give out or what kind of policies they put in place. So I don't know. How did you find the, like, transition from esports Skype to esports Discord? Do you still use Skype? I haven't signed in on Skype in forever.
No, I don't use Skype anymore, but I mean, so for me, it's one of those things where, like, I like to be aware of, okay, I think there's two things, right? One is, if it's a matter of, like, I don't like, say, certain features, right? Or whatnot, or like even like the UI or whatever program, that's one where I would have no problem making a conscious choice, even if it's not necessarily the most popular choice. And then there's the other side of, like, hey, if there's like a, if you believe that there is a security risk or something, so like talking about the security part, that's one where I'm just like, I'll be aware, right? And I will try my best to not use or do certain things until I absolutely need to. If I'll avoid it for as long as I can. But also, like, I've just kind of accepted, right? Like, if I'm not going to put in the time to make something that's going to overtake it, then I'm just going to use it, right? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if I can avoid it for as long as possible, then, like, sure. Then I just won't use it. And that's fine. Like, I used to not use, for instance, like, any sort of cloud storage service for the longest time. Pretty much practically until I was forced to use it for work, because, like, we would do things on, like, Google Drive and stuff, and I was like, okay, well, I guess, like, now it's a part of my everyday life, so I guess I'm using it. But before that, like, I just didn't use it, But when it comes to, I mean, I guess I look at it as, if it's for instance, if it's like supposed to be amongst, I guess, within my own social groups, let's say, I'm generally the one who will take initiative in a lot of my social groups. So if I wanted to change platforms for a private thing, then I don't think I would have an issue with that. But if it's also, say, like you said, if it's for like whatever product, right? Even if it's not your main like income source, if you're trying to make something out of it, then I think, you just kind of have to accept it, unless you have the resources, whether it's the time, skill, or money, to provide an alternative yourself, right? And then, you just kind of have to make do with the best you got. Like you said, if you're someone who, let's say, cares about ease of use or security, then, just making sure you're educated enough to utilize whatever that, let's say in this case, Discord, like provides, right? So just utilize as much of it as you can. But at the end of the day, you just kind of have to go with it. I mean, I don't know. I think I came to that conclusion at a earlier age where I was just like, it sucks, but like if I'm not going to, or I don't have the ability to fight it, then and then it's just, okay, well, I can either not use it and just not be part of that community, which a lot of times for me as a person and a personality, like I'm actually kind of okay with, or I'll just have to do it. Right. So I think that's what it comes down to. For instance, that's why like I like won't even look into things that, like, if I just don't care enough about it in the beginning. So for instance, like once I started regular streaming, everyone was like, why don't you have BTTV emotes enabled? And I was like, well, I've never cared to do that before, because watching streams, I didn't chat much. So I was like, okay, whatever. And even if I can't see other people's, like, I can picture it because I've seen it so often in like screen captures and things like that. And then same with Discord, right? People were like, do you have a Discord? And I'm like, oh, I guess I should like finally learn Discord and like set one up and like use it more. But I'm definitely more of the type of, okay, if I don't like it and I don't feel that I like need to use it, say for my job or whatever, then I would rather I just won't do it. And I'm okay taking that quote unquote loss, because to me as a personality, I don't take it so much as a loss. But I know for some people it's worse, right? I know for a lot of people it's like, well, now it sucks because I feel like I'm shoehorned into not having a choice. I guess I'm just more of the type where I'm like, I just won't be part of that community. And like if I'm losing out on stuff, whatever, like I'm losing out, okay, and then I just move on.
No, I know the feeling. I think that's the difference, is that like I'm also trying to catch myself in situations where it's like, okay, I'm a marketer, like that's my job now. And if you're not going to be on Discord, or if you're not going to be on Twitter, like the extreme example was saying that you don't want to be on Twitter. It's like when I was in journalism school, this was like 2009. I had a digital class, a web journalism class. This is maybe 2010ish, and I had a classmate who was like, I don't understand why we're learning Twitter, and I don't see the value in it. I don't want to be on this platform. I don't want to learn it. And literally for me, I was so annoyed with this one classmate, because this person was like was like this with a lot of things that we were learning, and I was like, I just turned to her and I said, I'm gonna take your job. Like I'm gonna, because I'm learning this and because I actually like understand why this is valuable and why this is going to be like a thing for the next couple decades in terms of our career path. I'm like, right. I'm gonna have this skill set that you don't, and I'm gonna take your job. I'm going to get a job opportunity that you're not going to get, because I understand this platform more than you. And maybe that's a little cruel and callous. I think it was more of just built out of my like frustration. I probably should have like tried to
phrased it better.
better. But at this point I was just so exasperated that I was like, you know what? I'm going to take your job, because I know this, and that, I don't want to say it didn't fix anything. It didn't exactly like click her into why this is valuable, but like I said with marketing, I can't, if I'm at a job where my job is to get as many eyeballs and generate as much revenue through advertising and community management as possible, I can't afford to ignore a service just because I personally don't like it. But I think what I'm trying to do now, and what I think a lot of people are really starting to pick up with, is that how much money our data is making other companies that we don't have a say in. And if you ever want a wake up call, go to Discord and request. You can request all your data that they have, and they will send you a zip on your email that has every DM that you've ever sent, every piece of media you've ever uploaded to the site, every message you've ever sent a public server, every message you've ever sent a private server. Just because you're on a private server doesn't mean that Discord's still not watching. And
of course,
for me as a person, I understand that that's what I've signed up for, and that's what's in the terms of service. They can legally do that because that's what you're agreeing to in order to use their service. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of making a company more money than I think is paying for the transaction of the service that I'm using, you know? So in certain situations, like with WhatsApp, even WhatsApp, I always worry that I'm going to like delve into like conspiracy theory, like sounding like I'm going to sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist with a tinfoil hat or whatever. But with WhatsApp, everyone's like, okay, that's at least end-to-end encrypted. So WhatsApp does not see what the messages of your what you're sending on WhatsApp are. But what Facebook does is that they have they look at the metrics or like the metadata of it. They look at who you're contacting and for how long and what you do before and after. And if they can do that effectively, they can kind of tell what you're saying, but even without reading each individual message. So the example that I use, or that I've seen used a lot, was that if you're on Facebook and you've connected your phone to Facebook and they know who your contact details are, and if you're on Facebook and you've listed like your spouse on Facebook, they know the relationship between you and a specific phone number because that spouse has their phone number listed. So if you're on WhatsApp and you're talking to a person that Facebook knows is your spouse, because WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, by the way, if you're chatting, say, for like 15 minutes with a phone number and that phone number is your spouse and Facebook knows that, after that WhatsApp conversation, you Google fertility clinics, or you Google STD test, or you Google divorce lawyer, and then Google knows that you've called that divorce lawyer, they can kind of get an idea of, I know maybe a bad example, pregnancy is probably the better one, where if you've all of a sudden Googled, midwives or something like that, or like pregnancy classes or whatever, they know that you talked to your spouse for half an hour on WhatsApp, and then they know that you Googled local pregnancy classes or stuff like that. So they can kind of make the inference that you're now expecting a child, for whether it's expected,
Sure.
non-expected, whatever. That's still not clear because the messages are encrypted themselves. But Google now can say, okay, well, we can safely serve pregnancy-related ads or child-related ads to this user and to the person on the other end, to the other person who has the phone number that we now know is that person's spouse. So that kind of still bugged me, like that. When you do a lot of privacy reading or reading about improving your privacy, a big thing is your threat model. It's the idea that you are looking and being like, okay, it's completely impossible for me to avoid all my data, being used by services, because like we say, we have to use Discord for our jobs. We have to use Google Drive for our jobs or something like that. So it's kind of impossible to avoid it wholesale, but you're trying to think, what am I content to not give up? And what am I cool with inconveniencing myself in order to secure for myself? So for people that I talk to on like a private level about, life stuff or whatever, I usually try to push people towards Signal. Signal is like, it's kind of like a more secure WhatsApp, and it has the user ability, or like the usability rather. It's not like a command line or anything like that. Like it actually has like a UI that, feels familiar. And for the most part, people can kind of understand. They're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense that like my data and my privacy and our messages, especially our messages, are just remain that level of private. I don't know. I think in the next like decade, as education gets better and people understand how much money that companies are making off of them, it'll become a little bit easier to say, okay, well, I'm tied to Discord because my friends use it, but I'm more inclined to try something else because I now value my privacy a lot more, or I value those kind of business practices a lot more. This kind of spiraled a little bit from my original.
I mean, I think you're hopeful, man. I mean,
I'm
we can barely get gamers to properly use command lines and console inputs. You know what I mean? Despite it always being preferred for a lot of like people who would consider themselves like core gamers. So I think because here's the thing. I don't think that will ever be widely educated, right? It would have to be something that is something you choose to, like, even if it's offered, you choose to listen to it or engage in it, because like you said, there is a business benefit to it not being known. And so I just don't think that
no, totally.
I think it will always be a niche group that is more just aware of what to and to not do to kind of navigate around whatever, you know, further digital environment we get into.
Isn't it hilarious that like esports players, you would think that the amount of time they spend at their computers, that they might actually be good at computers, and then you meet like an esports player and you're like, all right, you have to go to command, like your command line or your command interface in Windows, just to like run this one command, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have zero idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I talked to a friend of mine about this Discord stuff yesterday, and we were like, bring back IRC chats, because I remember with GG Chronicle we definitely had an IRC chat before Discord, and even before, I don't want to say before Skype, because Skype definitely existed there, but that was where the majority of our like inter-office chat happened, and for like editing articles and stuff like that. And it's like expecting people to do like a /join server IP like line, and it's like, no, people wouldn't do that these days. They need fancy Discord links that, you know, bring them to a specific channel and do all that kind of automated stuff anyway. I don't know. Maybe this is just getting old, or like me getting old and get off my lawn kind of stuff, but the internet used to be a lot more of a free place, and I know that comes into conflict with it used to be a lot less safe, let's put it that way. And I think a common thing that I've read anyway from people, I guess, in our generation, is the thought of, we were taught that the internet was an inherently dangerous and unsafe place to be. And I don't know if that's different for new generations, where, since, you know, they're only really expected to go to like certain centralized sites like Reddit, that the internet is not inherently dangerous. But I don't know. That goes into a whole bunch of other stuff that we do not have room for on this podcast. But that's my old man ranting about the network effect and data privacy and all that kind of stuff. I think everyone is allowed like one or two causes that they can be full tinfoil hat about, and data privacy is mine.
I think there's also a distinction between, like, there is definitely a division between the issue with data privacy and the quote unquote issue with network effects, right?
Yes, definitely. I kind of bled into...
They just happen to be compounded in a lot of platforms these days, but the network effect is definitely more. When you separate it, it will always come down to is it worth the hassle or not, right? Of either convincing or like offering an alternative, etc. Versus, you know, data privacy being like a whole different, and data privacy, I guess, therefore just becomes a factor of like priority in the, you know, any issues with network effects.
That's what means a lot.
Definitely a difference
to me. Yes, that's what means a lot to me. Is the data privacy aspect of it, but you're bringing it back to where it needs to be, where like the network effect it's a service thing. And one of my favorite quotes by Gabe Newell, guy who started Valve Software, I need to find. I have a page loading right now that is loading very slow, but. So the quote is, "We think that there's a fundamental misconception about piracy. Piracy is most always a service problem and not a pricing problem. If a pirate offers a product anywhere in the world 24/7, purchasable from the convenience of your personal computer, and the legal provider says the product is region locked, will come to your country 3 months after the U.S. release and can only be purchased at a brick and mortar store, then the pirate service is more valuable." So the idea is that Steam discourages piracy because it is more convenient than piracy, in the sense that when you buy a Steam license, because you're not buying the actual product on Steam, you're buying a license to the game. You can download it whenever. You can technically own it forever, and that's a little bit of point of contention where, like I said, you don't own the games you own on Steam. Valve just would probably torpedo their own product if they just suddenly took a game you paid for and said, hey, you can't download it anymore. But because it's such a convenient service, I know a lot of people that are just GOG or GOG.com and Steam and other platforms. I don't pirate these games and I buy them and therefore support the developers and that kind of stuff just because it is more convenient. I don't have to worry about cracking a game. I don't have to worry about viruses on my computer. I don't have to worry about where I'm getting it or who I'm getting it from. I know that I can trust these storefronts, and to a certain degree, it's the same thing with Discord, where it's a service thing. Unfortunately, I guess what I'm saying is that the more private or the more safe or the more old internet solutions to that, self-hosted solutions and whatever, are generally not as convenient, and that's what's going to keep people off those platforms. So I don't know, something to keep in mind when you're trying to not you specifically, but our listeners, I guess, is something to keep in mind when you're choosing which products to use or which services that you spend the most time on. It's always interesting to think, am I here because it's convenient, or am I here because it's good? Or maybe it's the other way around. Am I here because it's good, or am I here because it's actually just the most convenient thing? And I don't really want to spend the effort to go anywhere else. I don't know.
That's why I hate Twitter, but I use it. And I'm always very outspoken about that. I think it is, and even when I started, I hated it, but I joined it because I was this is clearly where most of esports and gamers are looking these days, so I guess I need to have one. And then obviously once you start doing official broadcasts, it's the main platform. So I'm I hate it, but I'm using it.
It's a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil.
So it's just one of the, but therefore, as long as I'm aware, that's why as soon as I started doing more production work, and I didn't necessarily need my Twitter to be a platform. I didn't tweet. I also lost 10,000 followers in the past 4 years. But I was okay, well, I don't need it.
If it doesn't matter to you in the first place, yeah.
Right, but because I was cognizant of that, it became a natural choice. I didn't have to sit there and freak out about whether I should stop tweeting or not. And then, now that I'm doing streaming and stuff, I'm trying to tweet a lot more again. But it's just one of those things where I think it's good to at least be aware of, like you said, why you're using it, and therefore the next time you do have a choice to make, it's not as uncomfortable, right? You can be much more clear-headed about, okay, well, I know the negatives, but I'm still going to use it, or hey, I don't really need it anymore, so I'm not going to use it.
I think that's the thing that maybe we're running out of time kind of on this episode, but I think the thing that I'm encouraging more people to do is just think critically. It's to think why am I here? Why am I using Reddit? Why am I surfing Twitter every day? Why am I posting this to Instagram? Why am I sharing what I'm sharing with people? Mostly just because I think people might just kind of coast, or they might do things based on what they see other people doing and just assume that it's natural behavior. So trying to think about why you do things is almost more important than actually doing them, because if you're, especially for creators, and this is veering a little bit away, but it's a good thing to end on, is that especially for creators, people can tell when you're faking things, and people can tell when you're doing things for the wrong reasons. So being able to kind of approach not just what you're creating, but like your digital life in like an authentic way as possible, and like knowing how those things work and why you're doing things is generally pretty important. And I'm very curious, like I said, in the next like 10, 20 years where this kind of thinking actually gets like taught in schools, hopefully. I know that's probably a pipe dream, but it would be interesting to see how, kids are taught to like consider their own digital footprints. I don't know. Speaking of digital footprints, Will, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on that platform I dislike called Twitter, and also the streaming platform Twitch, both at Will Chobra. So it's WILLCHOBRA. I stream 5 to 6 days a week, Korea time evening. So if you're in the U.S. or Canada, it can be, or I guess South America as well, it can be a little awkward time-wise, but you can always kind of drop in for a little bit here and there if you'd like. Usually you can find me playing AAA like story-based games, or usually those end up being JRPGs for the first time, so it's kind of sharing that experience. And then we kind of do community-nominated games as bit goals here and there. So right now, like you mentioned Kojima earlier, we're also working through Metal Gear Solid 2 at the same time as The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, that's where you can find me. I also do a weekly show with the esports brand called T1. The show is called Week of Legends. New episodes come out every Thursday morning Korea time, which is Wednesday evening or night for all our fans in the North and South Americas. And that's about the League of Legends scene in Korea. We usually kind of keep it's like a lighthearted talk show, right? We do some fun games, and then depending on our guest, we'll talk about whatever topics on hand with the recent like matches or players or news that comes up in the League of Legends scene.
Nice. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. MGS2 is definitely one of those games that benefits from playing MGS1 like very soon before, if that makes sense. Yeah, because it's for story reasons they like expect you to have like played it very recently. Or at least have the experience in your brain, and that's always like a cool thing to play on expectations. For me, I am working through Death Stranding. I don't know why I said that, because that's not where you can find me on the internet, but that's my current project, is just playing Death Stranding and enjoying it. I will probably be writing something about it. There's where we can take it back. I will probably be writing something about Death Stranding on my website in the next little bit. I had to manually. I didn't get to this when I was talking about like self-hosted stuff, but the last week I had to manually reconstruct every single blog post that I have on my site right now in a development environment. Like I installed WordPress locally in order to just test to see if a bug was there. So I had to go through 110 blog posts that I've made in the last like 3-4 years and like reconstruct them in a new CMS, content management system. And it gave me a very weird appreciation for the stuff that I wrote. And I'm like, I used to be nice at this. I used to like write like 4 blog posts a month. I used to be good at this. So it's almost kind of reignited a little bit of love that I have for writing blogs, which is probably the least community growth productive medium on the internet. But oh well, I love it anyway. So I wrote some stuff about manga recently. I am going to be writing some stuff about Death Stranding relatively soon. You can find all my links at mattd.cc. That's a URL, mattd.cc. Not really doing too much in the way of streaming or other stuff that way, but yeah, Twitter is probably the best way to find me, Instagram, that kind of stuff. I will see you next week, I guess, Will. I hope you have a good night.
And I hope you have a good morning, Matt.
Thank you to all our viewers. We will see you next week as well. Goodbye for now.